Hi, I'm Bodhi Van Rockout, and here's my dad. So, who are we interviewing?
Today we're interviewing a band called Heathen.
Cool.
They're from the 80s and they're from the San Francisco Bay Area, and they were one of my favorite bands when I was like a 15-year-old.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're talking to Kragen Lum. He is the guitar player for the band, and he wrote this new album. You can see I got the shirt, and we got the record. Okay, so Kragen should be calling in any second. Stand by.
I was about to ask. This must be an old band, because when you were a 15-year-old, well, the band must have been like around 20. So, is this an old band?
Yeah, they were around in the 80s, so it's been like 30 years or something since they put out a record. Oh, okay, there's Kragen. He's ready to talk to us.
Cool.
Yeah, he'll tell us the story.
Hello.
Hey, Kragen.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, cool.
Oh, right on. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a video option at all? Or are we gonna...
Oh, I'm not. The video's not on. There we go. How's that?
Ah, there you are.
There you are.
That's even better. We want to see you. Awesome. It's even better to make a connection.
Yeah, awesome. So tell me, you guys have is it a podcast or is it on YouTube?
On YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started writing about music in the mid 90s, and then I started this site about cannabis, and we started doing I started doing band interviews on that, and that's one avenue, but it's much more fun to do something with Bodhi, so we started this together so we can just
Awesome.
yeah, so we can interview bands and interview people and get to the real the heart of it, the love of music.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Awesome.
So, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and tell us the band that you're in?
All right. My name is Kragen Lum. I'm in the band Heathen from San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, so
Thrash.
awesome. Yeah, tell us a little bit about the history of the band and the history of Bay Area Thrash. Because I was telling Bodhi, I grew up in the Bay Area, and this is a band that I really dug when I was a kid. So I was really excited about this one. So,
Well, I didn't grow up in the Bay Area, so but I loved the entire scene. I lived in Los Angeles in my teenage years when thrash was starting, basically, and I heard pretty much all of those bands right from the beginning, and just fell in love with the style of music. So Bay Area thrash bands were all like really inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal, and bands like Motorhead and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest that kind of like pushed metal a little more to the faster kind of sound, and then they just kind of created their own style from it. So
Were you a fan of thrash back then?
yes, from the moment I heard it. I was in, how old are you?
9.
Okay, so when I was probably 12, I heard Metallica for the first time. And as soon as I heard Metallica, I went to my friends at school that listened to metal, and I said, I want all of the bands that sound like this. I want to hear their music. And I got a bunch of different tapes from other thrash bands and listened to them. So
what was your favorite, most of them that you liked?
Yeah, what are some of them that you dug back then?
Ask me the question one more time.
So what was your favorite out of all of your tapes that you got?
What was my favorite one? Wow. One of my favorites that for sure was Ride the Lightning by Metallica. And the other one was Bonded by Blood by Exodus. I wore out that tape. I had 3 of them. I kept playing it so much that it was worn out.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So how did you, I mean, when did you get back, when did, I can't speak. When did you start getting into guitar? Because I am, by the way, I'm just carrying on with the questions. But
Yeah. So when did you get into
I can't
playing
speak.
guitar?
When I was 8 years old, an album called Back in Black came out. This is AC/DC. And when I first heard the song Back in Black, it made me want to play guitar. So I got a guitar, but it was an acoustic. And I was learning on the acoustic guitar, and it didn't sound anything like AC/DC. So um, it wasn't probably until I was a few years later, like when I was 12 or 13, where I got more into playing electric guitar.
Like, how did you get your first electric guitar? Like, how did that happen?
My parents were really supportive of my music stuff. My mom went to college and studied music, and she actually traveled with the USO to do shows for the troops in this probably in the 60s and 70s, and also was a backup singer for Dean Martin in Hollywood. So they were always really supportive of my music stuff and helped me get my first guitar.
Oh, that's great. Did your mom teach you music? Like, how did you learn?
No, I always took music lessons. So when I was 5, I took piano lessons. When I was 8, I started taking guitar lessons, and then I got frustrated with the guitar because the teachers didn't get what I wanted to learn. And it wasn't until, like I said, I was more like middle school age where I found a teacher that kind of got what I wanted to learn. And then I remember a lesson in particular where I took in this song. I said, I want to learn this. And the teachers back then would have like a little cassette player that was next, like on a table or whatever, and they would listen and try and figure it out. And while my teacher was trying to figure this song out, I actually figured it out. And then I went to my mom and said, I think I need a new guitar teacher. And I found a studio musician in the LA area that was an amazing teacher. He taught me a lot about not just playing, but everything else that goes with music.
Oh, wow. I mean, so how do you think, do you think it was a gift? I mean, how do you think you were able to pick out the song before the teacher was able to?
I don't know. I guess it was. I mean, maybe there's some innate, something that I just have that allowed me to hear what he couldn't. I think more or less, though, it was that the guy that I was taking from at that time, he was more like a 60s and 70s rock guy, and he didn't understand metal. Like I learned a lot. I learned some things from him, but when it came to like deciphering like the metal sound, like he couldn't get past it. Like just the guitar distortion when it's heavy, some people can't hear the notes. And I think that was probably it. I don't think it really had anything to do with his ability or anything. I just,
Okay, yeah,
I was more familiar with listening to that kind of music, if that makes sense.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. So, like, you've stuck with it, and you transcribe the new record, right? So you wrote the new record, and we want to hear about that. And then on top of that, I mean, you transcribe the entire thing. So you stuck with music. What was it that really? What was the thing that got you so into it? Because like kids at Bodhi's age, they love the guitar, but practicing guitar, that's not so fun, and like learning that type of thing. So what was it that got you through that hump, like getting into really super learning the guitar?
Well, I mean, I took lessons off and on from age 8 until I was probably like 14 or 15, where I had that moment where I figured out the song, and I went home and I played along with the album. And as soon as I realized that I could play along with the album, something clicked and I wanted to practice. And so that was kind of what changed it for me, is just when something just clicked and I got it. I understood that I understood the connection between learning and practicing and then actually playing. You know what I mean? Like because I think that was what I didn't get before. I was always like, oh, well, this doesn't sound like AC/DC, so why am I doing this? I didn't see the connection, but I guess that was probably the moment. And then from then on, I wouldn't stop practicing.
Well, no, you haven't stopped yet, obviously.
Yeah, I don't get to practice like I used to. I got too many other responsibilities. All music related, but.
Oh, that's great. Let's see what else.
So how did you get into the band of Heathen?
Well, that's an interesting story. The singer David, I'll go back a step. We were looking for a singer for my other band, Prototype, and David was recommended to me. And we got in touch with him, and he came down and he auditioned for my band, Prototype. And it didn't end up working out, but he kept in touch with the other guitar player. And then when Heathen was looking for a guitar player to play with them, David called and asked if one of us would want to come up and audition. And I said yes, and I learned some of the songs and went up and auditioned, and they asked me right then and there if I wanted to play. So.
Oh, wow, that's great. I mean, tell us a little bit about Prototype.
Wait, Dad, stop! It's time for Rando Questio!
Okay.
Now, hold up this.
All right, sorry. Again, this is Bodhi's favorite part of the show. What are we doing here?
We asked the person that we're interviewing a Rando Questio. Now it's time for me to think of a Rando Questio. I got it. What's your favorite type of guitar that you use? My favorite type is a Rickenbacker, by the way.
Okay. My favorite type of guitar, regardless of brand, is a V shape. So I see one on the wall up there.
Yeah, that's my Jackson.
Yeah. I like it. There's one back here behind me. You can almost see it. That's a red Jackson V. And the V's are my favorite.
What was it about the V? Is it because it's metal, or?
I like the way that it looks, but I actually like sitting down with a V better than I like other guitars. And you can't do it with the Randy Rhodes because the one fin is shorter than the other. But I like the King V shape, and ESP makes them too. It's called the V2. And I like sitting down with those because when I sit down with it, it's basically at the exact same height as when I'm standing.
Oh, okay.
And it sits in the same position instead of like, when you put a guitar on one leg and it's kind of lopsided on one leg and you have to, it's not the same as when you stand up and play. So.
I love it. So you kind of alluded to the fact that, you have other music endeavors. So let's talk a little bit about that. What else, so there's the band that you mentioned, and then you were talking about you gave lessons. So tell us a little about, like what's the life like for a working musician such as yourself?
Well, I have to do a lot of different things. I have to wear many hats. There's a hat there. So I play in Heathen. I have my other bands that, we occasionally do things. I manage a couple of bands. So I manage Heathen. I co-manage Exodus. I manage a younger band called War Curse from Cincinnati, Ohio, that's going to be announcing their signing soon. I do guitar books. I teach guitar lessons. Any number of things. So lots of different things just to, you got to do what you got to do when you're a musician to keep going. Yeah. I don't have a day job, so I do lots of different jobs.
I love it. So I know that Lee, the guitar player in your band, also plays in Exodus. And so
Yep.
there's kind of a lot of overlap there. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the overlap between some of the bands here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, the Bay Area scene is kind of a small world. It's everybody knows each other well, and when essentially I was already playing in Heathen, and when Exodus needed somebody to fill in, the first time they asked Rick Hunold, who used to be in Exodus, to fill in for Gary. And he did a couple of tours, and actually Heathen was the support on one of the tours, so we all toured together. And there just came a point where he wasn't able to do it. He has a business, actually a cannabis business, and he couldn't, he just couldn't do it. So they were looking for somebody, and Lee recommended me. We had already toured together. I already knew all the guys. And so I did a tour in 2013. That was for the Exhibit B album. And then, they just needed a lot of help on the last tour. So they kept asking me, and I kept doing it.
That's great. I love it.
So what is exactly thrash metal?
What is thrash metal? That's a good question. It's just a specific style of metal where it tends to be a little faster and a little more aggressive than other types of metal. But there's still it's not quite death metal. Death metal came out after thrash, kind of. But it's hard to describe what it is. I don't like to put boundaries on what thrash metal is. There's lots of rules and regulations that other people put on the genre, but we basically just write whatever sounds good to us and we play it.
Do you listen to other types of music?
Yes, I do. I listen to the sort of late 70s, early 80s rock stuff that I grew up with. I listen to all kinds of metal, all the metal stuff I grew up with, the thrash metal, death metal. I listen to, sometimes I like classical music, even jazz. I studied both classical music and jazz in a couple of different music schools. So sometimes I listen to those. Whatever sounds good.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you write any, or do you ever want to play in any other type of non-metal bands, or aspire to play?
No, I mean, I really, what I try and do is anything that I have that's an influence that's not metal, I try to incorporate that into what I play. So there are some sort of like jazz chords, for example, that I would put into Prototype. That wouldn't be appropriate for Heathen, but there's a lot of classical influence in the Heathen music, actually. Lee grew up in a household where his mother was an opera singer and his dad was a conductor. So he heard and understood classical music, even though he's not a school, musician, meaning he has no formal education in music, but he innately understands it, and that comes out in the music that the band writes. So.
Well, I think I love Lee's story. I think it's one of my favorite rock and roll stories.
Yeah.
So do you like going on tour?
Yes and no. I love playing live. I love hanging out with the guys. But I also like being home. The travel is hard sometimes. And you miss your family and stuff when you're gone. So it's good and bad. We love playing for the fans though.
And so what's your favorite thing about touring and your least favorite thing about touring?
My favorite thing about touring is getting to spend time with the guys in the band and interacting with the fans. That is the best part of all of it, because that's kind of what music's all about, is the interaction between the band and the audience. My least favorite part of it, being sick on tour is the worst. I mean, the worst. And I seem to get sick every time we go out. So,
So how long have you been, like, what's the longest stretch that you've been out on the road?
probably about 7 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, that seems like that it's not long compared to the tours that bands used to do in the 80s, but that's, that's kind of long-ish for nowadays.
That's cool. So I want to hear a bit about how you wrote the record. Like, how'd you come up with all these great riffs?
Well, I'm one of those guys where if I come up with something, I either have to write it down, or in modern day, I'll grab my phone has voice memo or whatever, and I'll put it on my lap even. I don't even care if it's with a guitar's not plugged in. I just write, and whenever something comes to me, and I write it and hold on to it. And, sometimes songs come really easily. Some of the songs on the new record, like Sun in My Hand, that song didn't change. And I've had that song since 2012. And then there are other ones where it takes a while for them to kind of come together, like the title track, Empire of the Blind. I had the song, but it really wasn't where it needed to be, and I had to kind of tear it apart and rethink it, and to get it where I was happy with it. So.
Okay.
I want to tell you that my dad kind of is a big Heathen fan. He already just bought.
I see.
Got the record and CD.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
I just want to tell
him. Oh,
this.
okay. That's awesome. So what's your favorite song on the record, and what?
I don't know. They're all my babies, so it's hard for me to pick. I think all 3 of the singles that we released are 3 of my favorites. The Blight, the title track, Empire of the Blind, Sun in My Hand. I would also say the instrumental, Fine Red Mist. That's one of those things where the song is special to me for maybe other reasons besides, I love the song, but the fact that I got many of my sort of childhood heroes to play on the song together, Gary Holt, Rick Hunold, and former Heathen guitar player Doug Piercy all played solos on it. And I, as a teenage me, would never believe that all of these guys would play on a song I wrote. So that's kind of cool for me.
Yeah, I think that's cool for anyone to just, you like, obviously you love music growing up, and you're a professional musician. You've got a fantastic album out, and on top of that, you got to play with some of your childhood heroes. That's fantastic. What got you there? How do you, was it luck? Was it hard work? How does someone recreate this?
I don't know. I'll put it this way. For many, many years, I was playing in the LA scene, and I was stubborn. I was always sort of swimming upstream. I wanted to play what I wanted to play. I wanted to write what I wanted to write. I wanted my band to be the one that got me where I wanted to go. And it wasn't until I sort of stopped doing that and let the water carry me where it was going to carry me, so to speak, that I started to get where I wanted to go. From that moment where I got the Heathen audition, I kind of switched gears, and I said, this is going to be different. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to do it. And then one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. So You know, it's hard to know how to tell somebody to get there. I don't think I could do that. But I mean that willingness to kind of be open to opportunity is important.
I just thanks for telling your story. I mean, I appreciate it. I think, kids out there and other folks out there that want to follow their dream, seeing people achieve some of their dream is really great.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So I guess how do Heathen was like this established band in the 80s, and like how was that like bringing your songs into an established band and like taking the reins? And now, I mean, it sounds so 80s. It's just such a great record. It's just
Thanks.
fantastic. So how was that, like bringing your ideas into an established 80s band?
Well, I mean, I had to like get in the mindset of what does this band do, and what is it. I understood already from the first two records. I understood that the band didn't have any like boundaries or rules or anything like that. They played what sounded good to them, and the songs had variety. The albums had variety, and so that was sort of freeing. But then I just analyzed kind of like, okay, well, what makes Heathen, and that's different from all the other thrash bands. So they're one part sort of Bay Area, early Bay Area thrash like Metallica, Exodus. There's this sort of the song structures of like new wave of British heavy metal bands, where they use sort of similar song structures, I guess, and the writing style. There's the epic feel that bands like Rainbow influenced, and even Queen maybe to a certain extent influenced in Heathen. And then there's like harmonies from Thin Lizzy, and you take all these different pieces, and I think that combined with the fact that Dave is a melodic vocalist, I think that stuff is what makes Heathen. So when I write, I just get in that mindset, and I have to, I have to actually stop myself from saying, I don't know if that sounds like Heathen. The way that Lee describes it, he's like, if we write something that we think sounds good and Dave sings on it, it's Heathen. It doesn't matter what it is. So that gave me a lot of freedom. But I wanted to make the song sound, like Heathen. It's not going to be the same, we're not rewriting Goblin's Blade over and over again, but it was new and different, but each Heathen album has sounded very different from the other ones. So it's kind of hard to explain, but
I think you did a great job explaining it.
all right.
What's so cool about metal is that, it's maintained this this integrity, and the fans have been pretty unwavering, where I think that's kind of unique in the genre, or unique in music itself, just that genre, and having folks that are so devoted to that sound. I mean, what is your take on the metal scene since the 80s to now?
Yeah, I think we've had some years that were like what I would call down years, maybe, which would be sort of in the like mid 90s to 2000s, when sort of traditional metal stopped. And we still had metal. We had Pantera, we had like Chaos AD era Sepultura, we had Machine Head. There were a lot of bands, but those bands were more rhythmic than melodic. And I think that was the difference that I see sort of looking back. The melodic bands kind of went by the wayside for a little while. And, I mean, metal got people that like metal like me. I mean, we just like it, and we don't want to, we want new stuff. I think the only thing I can see that's kind of that's kind of a negative about the scene right now is just the rules that people are that put on the different subgenres. There's a lot of like, I mean, you know, whether it's thrash metal or technical death metal or any specific subgenre of the music, people seem to want to put rules. You know, first of all, they wanted to name it and call everything a subgenre, and then now they want to put rules on everything. And in a way, the rules make everything stale because all the bands try to stay in this little box of what they can do, and then they all end up sounding too similar. And I think we need to get rid of that and cross the boundaries a little bit more. That's where the innovation, you know, could come from. There's not a lot of innovation you can do with 12 notes and, you know, and chords and stuff. So, you know, finding ways to break the rules is the way that to keep everything fresh and going, I think.
I think you're right. I mean, looking back, growing up with metal, and when you probably experienced this too, you know, you just buy what looked cool or what sounded cool off the shelf. And then years later, looking back, it seems like people have like they've categorized it. You know, we didn't buy things, but it wasn't so categorized back then, right? And,
I would go into record stores, and if I saw anything that said Combat Records, Roadrunner Records, Music for Nations, Metal Blade, Noise, any of the metal labels, I would just buy it. I didn't care what it was. You know, I would listen to Halloween and Death in the same day. It didn't matter, you know.
yeah.
And I think that's the thing where people have gotten like, you know, everybody talks about niche, whatever these days, or niche. It's so like this subgenre of a subgenre that people are into, and they're like ignoring everything else going on around them, when maybe there's some really cool stuff, you know. I mean, I listen to everything. It doesn't matter to me what subgenre it is.
You know, I think maybe metal might be one of the most, like there's the most splitters of genres and defined genres than almost any style of music, almost. I was curious when you were kind of talking about those low years in metal, what was it? Was it detuned guitars, or was it, you know, bringing the hip hop into metal? I mean, what was it? Do you think that was kind of the down, kind of like drug it down a little bit?
I just think it was like, I just think that at that time, metal was just it was like, I don't know if it was one of those things where the genre had gotten stale because bands weren't innovating. I don't think it was really that, because like right at the end of the 90s, or sorry, right at the beginning of the 90s, there were bands that were coming out doing like really crazy cool stuff, you know, like Dream Theater was just coming out, and Cynic was meshing death metal and jazz. And I think there was a lot of cool stuff, but for whatever reason, people just got out of listening to it. So, you know, there were a lot of bands that just kind of soldiered on. Testament's one of those bands where they just kept going. And you know, they had to almost change their style to fit in with more rhythmic band.
So is metal back, or is it just stayed here?
Do you think it's like ever not gone away, or do you think it's back nowadays? Like when you think about metal and heavy music?
I don't think it ever went away. I think it kind of just got, like I said, I think it just kind of got put on the back burner for a lot of people. They were looking for other stuff and listening to other stuff, and I don't think it ever really died, but it was in a coma for a little while. It was hard to find bands, you know. I mean, you know, like thrash metal died, but bands like Nevermore came out, and they were awesome, and they were like the perfect substitute for thrash for me, because they had that element to it, but did their own thing, you know. So I don't know. I don't think metal could ever die.
Well, I thought disco kind of died, but I think it's back to life.
I think actually it didn't die either. It's just called something else now.
Yeah. So, what's your top 3 favorite records or albums?
Of all time?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Wow. Definitely of all time. Wow, that is tough. Okay, I'm going to say it's AC/DC Back in Black. Ozzy Osbourne, Diary of a Madman, and Metallica, Ride the Lightning.
All right. You got to find. Okay, I think we're going to. Thanks so much for your time. We got one last question, so we're going to end it after this question.
So, what would you give a kid like me that is literally born for the guitar advice, like me?
What kind of advice do you have for aspiring musicians out there?
Hey, I'm really sorry you guys are breaking up.
Oh, no problem. Bodhi wants to know, what kind of advice do you have for aspiring musicians that want to play music in a band?
For playing guitar?
Yep.
For your age playing guitar?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. The most important thing at your age for playing is to keep. You're back. I can't hear you.
We were both thinking that was the
There we go.
Got to cut out.
Oh, that's okay. It was right in the middle of the last question. It was cutting out, and I didn't hear it all. I think you asked what my advice for someone your age playing guitar would be.
Yes, correct.
Okay, good. Well, my advice for you would be to keep practicing. Find something that you really like to listen to and learn how to play it, because the more you do that, the more you'll be inspired to pick up your guitar. The part of practicing is what's called muscle memory, and getting your hands to do what you want them to do without thinking about it. So find something that you love to listen to and learn how to play it, and that'll flip the switch.
I love it. What's the best way for fans to get in touch with you and find out more about you and more about Heathen?
Well, Heathen is on Facebook. I believe it is Facebook and then heathen.official. We're also on Instagram at Heathen Thrash. I am on Instagram at Kragen Lum. And those are probably the best ways to keep up with what's going on with either the band or me.
Awesome. And I noticed, the record's doing really well, right? I've seen like lots of music outlets, and the reception has been really great, right? Oh no, we lost him again.
Oh no. We're back.
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. We just want to double check on the.
You sound kind of like a Scion from Battle. There we go.
Okay, can you hear us? Oh, we have the worst internet connection.
Now I can.
What's going on with this internet?
But the record's doing well. That's all we wanted to get, just to find out how the record's doing. The reception's been great, right?